Hello, dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of Africa Today. In today's edition, we are going to shed light about the latest taking place in the African continent, and we'll start with the negotiations between Cairo, Khartoum, and Addis Ababa on the filling and operation of the disputed Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which resumed on Sunday, days after Khartoum called for a new one-week round of talks aimed to revive the stalled talks between the three parties. Let's take a closer look in the following story.
Cairo, Addis Ababa and Khartoum agreed on Tuesday on holding 1 week long of talks in the Sudanese capital to set a time frame and framework for the renewed talks and outcomes to be reached in a different manner to previous rounds. Negotiations between the three sides on the filling and operation of the disputed Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam are to resume on Sunday, days after Khartoum called for a new 1 week round of the talks aimed to revive the stalled talks. According to an official statement released by the Sudanese Irrigation Ministry on Saturday, the talks bring together the irrigation ministries of the three countries under the African Union sponsorship. The talks are to set a time frame and framework for their new talks and outcomes to be reached in a different manner to previous rounds. Egypt relies heavily on its crucial water supplies from the River Nile. Cairo pulled out of the talks in late August after the three sides failed to reach a consensus on the legal and technical points of contention after Ethiopia proposed a package of non-binding guidelines for the filling and operation of the mega dam. Last Tuesday's meeting, which was pushed by South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, the current chair of the AU, was the first since the 7-week hiatus over the deal. Sudan has expressed its rejection during last week's meeting of the same negotiations approach that have led to a deadlock in the previous rounds. It has called for setting bigger and more effective roles by experts and observers, which includes the United States, the European Union and AU, to converge viewpoints for a deal between the three countries.
That was a call for Al-Asr prayer according to Cairo local time, and we are moving on with our program Africa Today. And Sudan said it agreed with the U.S. on restoring sovereign humanity. The deal is part of a U.S. pledge to remove Sudan from its designation as a state sponsor of terrorism. More details follow.
The Sudanese Ministry of Justice said on Friday it signed an agreement with the United States to restore the African country's sovereign immunity. The ministry said in a statement the agreement will settle cases brought against Sudan in U.S. courts, including for the bombing of U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1998, for which Sudan has agreed to pay $335 million to victims. The deal is part of a U.S. pledge to remove Sudan from its designation as a state sponsor of terrorism. President Donald Trump said this month that the United States will remove Sudan from the list as soon as Khartoum sets aside the amount of money it has agreed to pay to American victims of attacks and their families. To avoid new lawsuits, Sudan needed its sovereign immunity restored, which it lost as a designated sponsor of terrorism. The designation makes it difficult for its transitional government to access urgently needed debt relief and foreign financing as it fights an economic crisis.
There has been a slight increase in COVID-19 infections in Africa over the past months, according to the latest information from the African Center for Disease Control and Prevention. More details.
The number of new daily COVID-19 confirmed cases in Africa has started rising after declining since mid-July, although in some countries cases are still on a downward trend. According to the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Africa CDC, over the 4 weeks up to the 25th of October, there was a 6% average increase in new cases. This was across most regions except in West and Central Africa. In Nigeria, there was a decline in new cases. Egypt, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, South Africa and Kenya recorded increases over this period, but in Ethiopia there was a marginal decrease. And other countries which have experienced the decreases in new cases include Sierra Leone, the Gambia, Burkina Faso, Eswatini and Ivory Coast. The head of the Nigerian Center for Disease Control says the low numbers recently could be attributed to a drop in testing caused by the curfew imposed in some states following anti-police brutality protests. By contrast, Kenya has been experiencing a steep increase in new cases. Data from Africa CDC shows over the past month, cases increased by 45% on average. New deaths have been on a decline on the continent for 2 weeks now after being on an upward trend. The Africa CDC says there was a 15% decrease in new deaths the past week compared to the previous week.
Well, with that, our viewers, we come to the end of our program Africa Today. Thank you very much for watching.